Hello, everyone. This is Shadi Reis from CVI 2023. I'm really privileged today to be with Dr. Jim Muller, who is, without introduction, has been achieved a lot during his career besides being a cardiologist. Dr. Muller, thanks for being with us.
Well, thank you for your interest.
Yeah. So you are the keynote speaker for CVI 2023, and your history, basically in the clinical aspect, is talking about vulnerable plaque.
Yes.
So you would like us to walk through the development of that terms, where it's coming from?
Yeah. So the vulnerable plaque concept we put that forth in 1989 when we were studying triggers of heart attacks. You know, sometimes a tennis game can cause a heart attack. So that's a trigger. And we wondered, why would a tennis game one week cause a heart attack, but not the week before? So we thought maybe the plaques become vulnerable and they become more likely to rupture. So that's how we came to the concept.
Is this something developed from animal model initially?
No, I think it evolved from clinical observations. Because we knew that heart attacks were more frequent in the morning than other times of the day. So we wondered, why would the rupture of a plaque occur in the morning? And we thought maybe that's a time when the blood's more likely to clot, or certain factors come together to trigger the heart attack.
Yeah. So what are these factors that really is, because some patients say it's a public knowledge now that this attack happens, but from scientific standpoint, just for the audience.
Yeah. So the main thing that produces a heart attack is a cholesterol-rich plaque. So you have a pile of cholesterol in the wall of the artery covered by a thin cap. And that cap can rupture. The blood goes by, sees the cholesterol, and decides to clot. That's what produces most sudden deaths and most heart attacks.
Right. And is there variability between men and women in terms of variable plaque progression?
No, it's pretty similar. It's offset by about a decade. You know, the women, fortunately, don't see coronary disease until about a decade later than men do.
Compared to men, yeah. There's a term come with plaque rupture and plaque erosion.
Yes.
Are they different names for the same process?
A plaque rupture is when that cap is broken. And erosion is where a clot seems to form on top of the cover, and there's no rupture in sight. It might be that the cover has lost its ability to retard clotting.
Yeah. So how we can make this cap stronger?
Lower cholesterol. There's some beautiful studies now with imaging that shows if you give a PCSK9 inhibitor and dramatically lower the plasma LDL, that you can make the cap thicker.
And that's what the THICFA concept came from.
Yes.
Yeah.
A thin cap fibroatheroma is more dangerous than a thick cap fibroatheroma.
And I remember the cutoff is 65 micrometer is where THICFA become endangered.
Yes, there is that cutoff at 65 microns, but it's probably a continuum. You know, it's not a magic number.
Magic hard number, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So over the course of your career, you developed that concept and you practice as a cardiologist. Now, there is a study happened, I think, not too long ago, where studied the THICFA and the lipid core plaque. And there is some argument that maybe we should prematurely stent or stabilize it. So what's your take on this?
I'd say it's more than an argument, it's a fight.
Right. I'm trying to be gentle.
Yeah, well, and then, most of my work and my colleagues has been based on diagnosis. Can we find dangerous plaques? There's another field of research that is becoming more active, which is, do they need local treatment with maybe a stent, maybe a drug-coated balloon, maybe cryotherapy, maybe a resorbable scaffold? There are all these local treatment ideas because it's been proven that these plaques can be found. There are 9 outcomes trials where you make a coronary measurement, then you wait a couple of years to see who has a heart attack. And in all of those trials, it's possible to find dangerous plaques. But the question is, are those plaques more dangerous than a stent? Because we're not talking about stenosis. We're talking about non-stenotic plaques. And if a clinician puts a stent in a non-stenotic plaque and bills Medicare for it, they go to jail. So it's not settled. What it needs is randomized trials.
Right.
And a very large randomized trial is near completion in South Korea. It's called the PREVENT trial by S.J. Park. Over 1,500 patients have, with non-stenotic vulnerable plaques by near infrared, by OCT, by IVUS. Those plaques have been randomized to stenting. And those results will be presented at the ACC in March of next year.
Oh, that's why this is very important study.
It's going to be an extremely important study, and it will end some of the controversy.
Absolutely. Well, now shifting gears from medicine, you have been a great advocate for prevention and prevention of cardiology, but also you have been a pioneer in prevention of nuclear war. And as a physician, and so tell us about your journey a little bit.
So my journey started when my father said, instead of German, why don't you study Russian in college? Because look at Sputnik going over there. So I took 4 years of Russian at Notre Dame. The teacher gave A's to everyone in the class, so I thought it was a good way to get into medical school, is to take Russian. So I studied it. Then I became an exchange student in Moscow in 1967 for 6 months. Spoke no English during that. And there I began to see Russian nuclear weapons going through Red Square, realizing they're aimed at my home in Indiana, and it was horrible. So I began to work against nuclear weapons indirectly by building up Soviet-American health cooperation, getting to know the Russian doctors. And then in 1980, where after we'd worked together on coronary disease, we had friendships, and we used that Russian-American medical bridge to build a world movement against nuclear weapons. We were invited to speak on Russian national television against Russian nuclear weapons, and we spoke on U.S. television against Americans. And the number of nukes in the world fell from about 60,000 down to about 13,000,
wow,
where we are today. So that it won the Nobel Peace Prize for that work. And then that group created a second group to abolish nuclear weapons. I thought the first group is diagnosis, the second group is treatment. In the way I think of these things.
Yeah.
And that group won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. So there are two medical peace prizes because of nukes. And now, with the war in Ukraine, the public is once again seeing the nuclear threat. You know, it's a strange threat. It's like I call it a dragon, lives in the forest, and every once in a while you can see it. You know, it came out at the Cuban Missile Crisis, it came out in 1980, and it's back again. And it will keep coming back until nuclear weapons and war are abolished. Humanity will have to deal with this problem.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your invited, if you don't mind, and if this is not embargoed, about your invited editorial for the upcoming publication?
So what an extraordinary thing is happening on August 6th. The editors of the major medical journals of the world are going to publish a statement calling for certain things against the nuclear threat. They're going to call for nations to make a pledge of no first use. They're going to call for taking these weapons off hair trigger alert. These weapons can be fired within 15 minutes, and they have to be controlled by computers, which are going to have artificial intelligence. So humanity is turning over its fate to computers, and can easily blow up the world. So the editors are taking a stand. Because I've worked in this field for so long, I've been asked to write a commentary, and the title I currently have, tonight anyway, is Medical Editors versus Nuclear Weapons. Is the pen mightier than the sword. So I'm sticking with that for tonight. Maybe tomorrow morning it'll be different. But that's going to be published in a major medical journal to go with this statement by these editors.
That's
I think
amazing.
it's marvelous that they're doing that, because it's going to make the point that the medical profession, the voice of reason, the voice of science, the voice of prevention, is desperately needed on this threat to humanity.
Absolutely. And this is something I never witnessed during my practice time in my life before, and having this initiative from physician is really striking.
Physicians are
And editor,
respected,
yeah.
and they understand the science of nuclear weapons, and they understand the medical consequences of use. But you know, I think the hardest thing that has to be discussed is not the abolition of nuclear weapons. It's more difficult. It's the abolition of war. That's what's required, because as long as there are wars and people know how to make these things, the nuclear threat is permanent. And you can't tolerate a 1% chance of nuclear war every year for a century. It's going to happen. You know, we will leave that to our children and grandchildren unless we can eliminate war. There was a lot of talk of elimination of war after Hiroshima. That's why the UN was founded. And unfortunately, the major nations have been unwilling to give a touch of sovereignty to the UN so that the UN could solve these problems rather than going to war.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Muller, really very insightful interview, and talking to you. I think this is going to be like a 60-minute interview rather than just 10 minutes. I appreciate your time. I'm really looking forward for your keynote talk today.
Well, you've
and
heard
also,
it. You don't need to hear it. You've already heard it.
You're going to be more exciting as well. And also your publication coming up soon. So everybody should stay tuned for it. We'll put a link for that article at the description of this video before production. Thanks you for your time again, and really a pleasure meeting with you. Please watch this video and others on the CVI YouTube channel. This is Shadi Reyes from CVI in Austin 2023. Dr. Muller, thank you so much.